Okay. I'm going to have a start on the bottom of Yud Amud Beis with the new piece from the Mishnah. And then that way the guys will, who are joining in, will be able to pick up, okay, as I explain what's going on. Okay. Remember, we've seen the question about the width of the entranceway. And the Gemara clearly indicated, according to the Mishnah, that if the width was more than 10 amos, okay, one would have to, or higher, a certain height has to be reduced. Okay. However, okay, we also saw that the Mishnah told us that if it's in a tzuras Pesach, all right, it does not have to be reduced. Okay, all right. So that's where we're picking up. As I said, Yud Amud Beis, bottom 2 lines, roughly bottom, actually 4 lines. Im yesh lo tzurat hapetach, if it has the tzuras hapesach, af al pi sherachav me'eser, even though it's wider than 10 amos, eino tzarich lema'et. We do not need to reduce it. So the Gemara is saying the following, basically, as we get into the text. If you say it's got this attachment, so to speak, all right, that what about going the opposite direction? If I have an attachment, a cornice up on top, okay, does that apply also? And that's what we're going to find, says the Gemara. Ashkechan tzurat hapetach, the mahanya v'rechavo. We find that with the tzuras of Pesach, right, even though it may be wider, we don't have to do any other adjustments, okay? V'amal tara, and what about a cornice, right? So the Gemara is the mahanya v'gavo, and we found that that also works in terms of its height, okay? So the Gemara now, as we get to Yud Aleph, right? Today's Ipchamai. What about the opposite? Okay. All right, the reverse. Could we say that if we had put a tzuras of Pesach on an entranceway that's more than 20 amos, or if we say that we put a cornice on something that, okay, that's more than 10 amos wide, do those work? Tashma, listen to the following brighta, says the Gemara. Mabui shehu gavoa me'esrim ama yima'et. Okay, that the alleyway that is, right, we said here, okay, that's higher than 20, needs to be reduced. Ve'im yesh lo tzurat hapetach, and if it has tzuras hapesach, eino tzarich lema'et, it doesn't have to be reduced. Amal Tara, if it has this cornice b'rechavomai, in terms of regarding its width, what's the status? Tashma, listen to the bright that says, Tanya mabui shehu gavoa me'asrim ama. Again, an alleyway that is higher than 20 ama, yima'et, must be reduced. V'harachav me'eser, and one that's wider than 10, yima'et, must be reduced. Ve'im yesh lo tzurat hapetach, if it has a tzuras hapesach, eino tzarich lema'et, it does not have to be reduced. Ve'im yesh lo almaun tara, and if it has a cornice, eino tzarich lema'et, it does not have to be reduced. Mai lav asefa, are we saying that this applies to the end statement of this braita? Lo aresha. No, we're saying, okay, it applies to the earlier statement in the braita. Matne la Rav Yehuda. And so Rav Yehuda clarifies, and he's saying as follows, okay? So what is he doing? He was teaching this braita, B'chia bar Rav, to Chia bar Rav, the son of Rav, Kameh de Rav, and he taught it as a note tzarich lema'et, that one does not have to reduce. Amarle, so Rav says to Rav Yehuda, Atneya tzrich lema'ed. Teach it to him that one does have to reduce. So in other words, Rav had right, a different view. Now, Amar Rav Yosef, says Rav Yosef, in the following situation, okay, Midivrei Rabbeinu, from the words of our teacher, namely he's referring to Rav here, right? Nilmod chatzar sheruba ptachim v'chalonot. That if we have a courtyard where the majority of the, I'm going to say sides, are openings and windows, okay? What happens, right? Eina niteret, it's not permitted, namely to carry there. Why? B'tzurat hapetach, with a tzurat hapetach. My tama, what's the reasoning? Ho'il v'yoter me'eser oser. Why? Because it's possible, since you have the amount of openings being wider than 10, it's forbidden. B'mabui, okay, and in regards to a alleyway, ufrots meruba al ha'omed, and the breaches are greater than the amount of standing covered spaces. Osir, there too would be forbidden. The chatzar, in regards to a courtyard, mayoter mima'aser, what might be more than 10, right? Ha'oser b'mabui is likewise then forbidden with regards to the alleyway. Eino nitar b'tzurat ha'pesach, and therefore it would not be viable, okay, corrected, if you will. It's not permitted using tzuras ha'pesach. Af protz meruba al ha'omed ha'oser b'chatzer eino nitar b'tzurat ha'pesach. And thus, he says, in a situation where the amount of open spaces is greater than the amount of closed wall, okay, it's forbidden in a courtyard, and it's not permitted using tzuras ha'pesach. So the Gemara now wants to clarify, right? What happens? Ma lioter mi'aser ha'oser b'mabui. Right? So the Gemara is asking the question, how can you make this comparison, okay, when you have more than 10, okay, of the mabui that forbids, right, that it prohibits. Shekain lo hitart bo etzel pase biraot l'Rabbi Meir, okay, whereas there, okay, you did not permit, okay, carrying within the example of the board surrounding a well, according to Rabbi Meir. Tomar b'parutz meroba al ha'omed ha'oser b'chatzer, where you might say that when the openings are greater than the walled area, which is prohibits carrying in a courtyard, shekain hitarta etzel pasei biriot the divrei hakol, that therefore you're going to permit in regards to the walled in area surrounding the well, that you're going to say is permitted by everybody. Okay, so that becomes our question. How can you make this parallel? Where in one case, okay, right, you have saying that you've only got these, so to speak, boards up, and you have the possibility that you may have more open space than boards surrounding the well, but you permit carrying there, but you don't use that same principle in regards to the chatzer. How is that comparable? Lema Messiah. Okay, so the Gemara says, let's say that the brightest supports the view, again, that the tzuras ha'pesach is not effective in that situation. Dafnot halalu sheruban ptachim v'chalonot mutar. Okay, that where we're saying that where the walls, okay, where we have more openings and windows, okay, that's permitted. Ubilvad sheyehe omeid merubeh al haparutz. That's only a situation where the walls which are standing are greater than the amount of space which is open. Sheruban sakada'atcha. You're saying that the majority, is that what you're implying? That are mostly open? Is that what you think? Ela ema, but rather I would say, sheriba behen ptachim v'chalanot. Okay, I would say, says the Gemara, the following. Okay, that when we could say that carrying is permitted, okay, in which we have many entrances and windows, ubilvad sheyehe omeid merubeh al haparetz, only so long as the amount of walled area is greater than the amount of open area. Now, Amar Rav Kahana, okay, not happy with this, says Rav Kahana. Kitanya hahi b'pitchei shemai. He says, when we were talking about that situation, we were dealing with broken so to speak, entranceways, right? In other words, it's not a real clear entrance, but a breach in the wall, where part of the wall may still remain, but you have a hole there in the wall. Mai pitche shemai. What do we mean when we say these are broken, or Art Scroll calls them defective entranceways, broken entranceways? Plige ba Rav Rechume Rav Yosef. That there's a dispute between Rav Rechume and Rav Yosef. Chad Amar Dalit Laho Shikve. One says that it lacks a doorpost, okay, right? The sides, clear doorposts, right? Mezuzot. V'chad Amar Dalit Laho Tikra. And another says it lacks a lintel, okay, nothing on the top. Right? That's what they mean by defective or broken doorways, entrances. Va'af Rabbi Yochanan Savarla Lahadarav. And likewise, Rabbi Yochanan also holds the view of Rav, okay? That if you have this opening, okay, and in the Mabui, and it's larger than 10 amos, okay, it could very well be that the Tzuras Pesach is not effective. The Amar Ravin Bar Rav Ada, as said by Ravin Bar Rav Ada, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak, Ma'aseh ba'adam echad, mibek'at beit chortan. We have a situation, an incident, he says, where a certain man came from the valley of Beis Chorsa. Right? Okay. Shena'atz arba kundisin, okay, ba'arba pinot hasadeh. And he stuck down 4 poles in 4 corners of the field. Umatach zimora alehen. And then he stretched a grapevine along the top of the 4 poles. Ubama aseh lefnei chachamim. And the incident came before the sages. Vehitiru lo le'inyan klayim. And they permitted this stretched vine over these poles in regards to the law of kalayim, namely as a fenced-in area, to grow vines on one side and other species, on the other side. Va'amar Reish Lakish, kederech shehitiru lo le'inyan kalayim, kach hitiru lo le'inyan Shabbat. The same way they permitted him in regards to Klayim, they likewise permitted him in regards to Shabbos. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, L'klayim hitiru lo. According to Rabbi Yochanan, that wasn't the case. They permitted him for Klayim, L'inyan Shabbat, lo hitiru lo. But in regards to Shabbat, they did not permit him to rely on it and to carry within that area. B'mai eskinan. So what are we talking about, asks the Gemara. Ilema min hatzad. If you're going to say, as we continue on 11a3, okay, that the following, right? Okay, if you're going to say that when he attached the vines, they were attached to the side of the pole and not along the top of the pole, okay? Namely, V'ha'amar Rav Chisda, didn't Rav Chisda say, Tzurat ha'petach, shesta'a min hatzad, lo asa v'lo klum, that if the, let's call it beam, lintel, okay, for the Tzuras HaPesach is on the side and not along the top, it's worthless. Ela al gaban, or if it's outside, b'mai, what are we talking about? Ilema be'eser. If we're talking about a situation where it's 10, baha, lema Rabbi Yochanan b'Shabbat. Let Rabbi Yochanan say then also that they would permit it for the man for Shabbat to carry there. Lo, isn't that the case? Elalav biyater me'eser. No, we're talking a situation where it was more than 10. Lo, it's not the case. Le'olam ba'eser. No, we're dealing generally with a situation that it has an opening of 10. Umin hatzad, and when we're talking about that they extended the vines on the sides of the poles, ubederav chista kamiflage. And what they're arguing about is the view of Rav Chisda that invalidated, so to speak, the vine, or what we would call the lintel in this case, along the side as opposed to on the top. V'rami de Rabbi Yochanan ad de Rabbi Yochanan. V'rami de Reish Lakish ad de Reish Lakish. And if that's the case, then we have a contradiction between one statement of Rabbi Yochanan and another, and a contradiction between Reish Lakish and another one of his statements. The Amar Reish Lakish, as Reish Lakish says, Mishum Rabbi Yehuda Bar Chanina, in the name of Rabbi Yehuda Bar Chanina, the following, okay, Pe'ah muteret la'inyan kla'im, namely that if one has a braided vine, okay, and he stretched it, okay, across the poles, okay, it would be permitted for the purpose of the Kalayim laws, aval lo l'Shabbat, okay, but not for carrying in that area of Shabbat. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, and Rabbi Yochanan says, Kimechitzot l'Shabbat delo, the same way, says Rabbi Yochanan, that it doesn't form an acceptable, let's say, area partitions for Shabbat, kach mechitzot l'klayim delo. This way it doesn't form acceptable partitions for klayim. Bishlema de Reish Lakish, ad Reish Lakish lo kasha. If that's the case, okay, then we might say, in regards to Reish Lakish, we don't have a contradiction. Why? Because we could say there, hadidei, hadirabe. In one case, he was presenting his own view, and in another case, he was presenting his teacher's view. Ele de Rabbi Yochanan ad de Rabbi Yochanan, kasha. But regards to Rabbi Yochanan, we still have a problem. Now, I amart b'shlema hatam al gaban, right? If it's going to be okay, if you say if the vine is on the top of the poles, okay, when the poles are more than 10 amos apart, right? Hacha min hatzad, okay, but here, okay, if we say, okay, that it was from the side, okay, shapir, right? We're going to say, okay, where it's a plated vine from the side, that's going to be good, all right? Ela I amrat idi ve'idi min hatzad. But if you're going to say, in both cases, the vine was going around the side, whether it was a plain vine or a plated vine, mai ikalamema, okay? What can be said to resolve this contradiction of Rabbi Yochanan? Le'olam idi ve'idi min hatzad. We're going to say, in this case, that both cases were on the side of the poles. Hatam ba'eser, but in one case, the area, the open area was only 10 amos. Hacha biyoter me'eser. And in another case, it was more than 10 amos. Okay? So therefore, when the fact of making a tzuras a Pesach, in that case, could work for Kalayim, so long as it's not more than the 10 amos. So Gemara wants to raise a question and ask, Umina temra deshani lan ben eser liyoter me'eser? On what basis can you say that the law differentiates between 10 amos and more than 10? The Amar le Rabbi Yochanan le Reish Lakish, as was said by Rabbi Yochanan to Reish Lakish, Lo kach haya hama'aseh. That wasn't necessarily the incident that took place. Okay. Shahalach Rabbi Yoshua, Eitzel Rabbi Yochanan ben Nori. Was a situation where Rabbi Yoshua, okay, who was a recognized authority himself, went to learn Torah, okay, by Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, who was considered more even of an expert, right? L'mo Torah, afal pi shebaki behilchot klayim, even though Rabbi Yoshua himself, okay, was an expert in the laws of Kalayim, right? He wanted to find out Rabbi Yoshua ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri's view on this kind of situation. Umatsu sheyoshev bein ha'ilanot, and he found him sitting, okay, among some trees. Umatach zmora me'ilan le'ilan, and he had stretched a vine from one tree to another. V'amarlo, and he said to him, Rabbi, I gefanim kan, mahu lezroa kan. If you have stretched the vine and you make this viable, okay, for vines here, what about planting other kinds of crops? Amarlo, ba'eser mutar. He said to him, if it's a space of 10 amos, okay, then you've got valid side posts, right? And it's permitted. Biyoter me'esa asur. But where it's more than 10, it's forbidden. But my yaskinan, what are we talking about then? Ilema al gaban. If we're going to talk then, okay, about the fact that the vine was on the top of the poles, yoter me'eser asur, we're going to say that more than 10, it's forbidden. V'hatanya, but aren't we taught elsewhere in a Braita? Hayusham kanim hadokar anim. If we have tapered poles, okay, or perhaps reeds with points that are stuck in the ground. Va'asalahen pe'ah milamala, and one ran a plaited, again, a vine, a braided vine along the top, right? Afilu biyoter me'eser mutar. That even when it's more than 10 amos, It's printed. Okay. What's he saying? Lav minatzad, and not from the side, okay, of the poles. V'ka'amar le ba'eser mutar, but when he says that with 10 it's permitted, yoter me'eser asur, more than 10 it is forbidden. Shma mina. Indeed, that's what we learn from this situation. Okay. All right, we've now entered into discussion about the fact that we said that if we have a tzuras Pesach on this, even more than 10, according to the Mishnah, opening, we don't have to reduce it, which now leads us to want to clarify what other aspects of tzuras Pesach, right? Amar Rav Chisda tzuras Pesach she'asa'a min hatzad lo asa v'lo klum. Okay, so Rav Chisda, we said, holds that if you put the lentil, the cross piece, along the side and not on top, right, it's as if you have done nothing, has no significance, right? V'amar Rav Chisda, Tzuras HaPesach Shamru, when they talked about Tzuras HaPesach, tzricha shetehei bria kedei lahamid ba delet. It has to be something that's strong enough to hold up a doorway. Okay? So what do we mean this hold a door? Va'afilu delet shel kashim, even if the door is only made out of straw. Amar Reish Lakish, says Reish Lakish, Mishum Rabbi Yana, in the name of Rabbi Yana, Tzurat HaPesach, Tzrika Hecher Tzir. He gives another qualification, Reish Lakish, that namely that this doorway has to have some sort of hinge or a pivot hole, okay? Right? So in other words, think of the fact that how did they attach it to the doorpost? Okay, it could be that there was a hole down in the bottom, okay, and one up in the top of the lintel, and it swung on that, right? Mai heker tzir. What do we mean by it has to have some sort of visible, right, sign, all right, exactly. Amar Rav Iva Avkata. Rav, he says that it has to have, in this case, a avkata, which is really a hinge. Okay? So in other words, it says it has to have an attachment to that, right? Side beam to the mezuzah, to the door. Ashkachinu Rav Acha, Berei de Rav Avia, Talmidei de Rav Ashi. So we have now a situation where Rav Acha happened to meet some of the students, okay, right, of Rav Ashi. Okay, Amar lo, and he said to them, Amar mar midei b'tzurat HaPesach. Did the master happen to teach something about the requirements of Tzuras HaPesach? Amrule, they said to him, Lo amar v'lo klum. He didn't say anything. In other words, he did not say anything specific. However, the Gemara now teaches us something. Tana, there is a Braita. Tzuras HaPesach Shamru, when they spoke about a Tzuras HaPesach, Kanemikan, V'kanemikan, it has to have sort of a side post, okay, right? A pole here and a pole here, Utzrich, right? Al Gabehen, and another pole on their top of them. Tzrichin liga, o ein tzrichin liga. So now we'll ask another question. Does that top piece Must it actually be touching the side posts or not? Okay. All right. This is an important issue, by the way. All right. Rav Nachman Amar Ein Tzrichim Liga. According to Rav Nachman, it doesn't have to touch. Okay? Now we could argue if it was within 3 tfachim, well, we've got no problem. We've got lavud. Or we've got another no problem. We could say it's lowering. Rav Sheshet Amar Tzrichin Laga. But Rav Sheshet says it has to touch. Now, we're going to see the following story. Right? Azal Rav Nachman went, Va'avad Uvda Be Reish Galuta Kishma'ate. And Rav Nachman made a halachic decision at the house of the Reish Galuta according to his lesson, according to his psak, that it doesn't have to touch. Amar le Rav Sheshet, the Shamei Rav Gada. And Rav Sheshet then went and told his servant, okay, his aide, let's say, Rav Gada, Zil Shlof Shadinu. Go, he says, shlof, pull it down, remove it, and throw it away. Okay. So what did Rav Gada do? This is pretty chutzpahdik, right? Okay. Azal, Rav Gada went, shalaf, shadinu. He pulled it down, threw it away. What did the people of Reish Galuta's household did? Ashkachuhu, the Bei Reish Galuta. Okay. We found, okay, that the household, members of the household of the Reish Galuta, Chavshuhu, they put Rav Gada into prison, so to speak. They jailed him. Azal Rav Sheshet, Rav Sheshet came. Kam Ababa, he came to the doorway. Amarle, in other words, the door of the, wherever they had imprisoned poor Rav Gada, okay, thinking that he had done it on his own. Amarle Gada Puk, okay, Gada, come out. Ta Nafak Ba'ata, okay, and he told them, right, you can leave the prison, come out. He left the prison and he came to Rav Sheshet. What happens? Ashkechei Rav Sheshet, the Rava Bar Shmuel. Rav Sheshet then met Rava Bar Shmuel, Amarle, and he said to him the following, Tane Mar Mide Betzurat HaPesach. Did the master teach any specific rules regarding Tzuras HaPesach? Amarle in. He said to him, yeah, absolutely he did. Okay? Tanina Kippah. What did he tell him? He told him that the following. Okay? This is what he taught him. If we have an archway, okay? And the archway normally is curved, right? Okay? Rabbi Meir Mechayev Mezuzah. Rabbi Meir says a mezuzah is required. V'chachamim potrin. And the sages exempt it. V'shavim, but they do agree. She'im yesh beragaleha asara. Okay? That if it's a height of 10 tfachim high, shehi chayavet. That in that case, it would, the archway would require, okay? Because what we could argue in that case, even though it's initially curved, okay, it still has doorposts and still could have a cross piece above the archway, right? And therefore be considered valid, Tzuras HaPesach. Amar Abaye hakol modim im gvoha asara. That's based on the fact that they all agree that its height is 10. Tfachim. Ve'en beragleha shlosha. Okay? But in this case, that it's not less than 3 tfachim. Inami, yesh beragleha shlosha, ve'en gvaha asara. But if it's more than 3 tfachim, okay? If it doesn't have 3 tfachim and it's not 10, velo klum, then it doesn't need. Ki plige, b'yesh beragleha shlosha gvaha asara. So does that imply that what they're arguing about, okay, is a situation, okay, where the legs, the sides, okay, is at least 3 tfachim before the opening, okay, but it could be less than 4, and the height of the archway is 10. Okay? Ve'ein rechava arba'a, but it's not wider than 4. V'yesh ba lachuk lahashlima la'arba'a, and it would be even possible to carve away the sides of this archway to make it wide enough to be 4 tfachim. Rabbi Meir savar chokekim lahashlim. Rabbi Meir is of the opinion that we could carve to complete the necessary dimensions and therefore see it as a valid opening. Okay, and therefore that's why we require the mezuzah. V'Rabbanan savrei ein chokekim lahashlim. But the rabbis hold that they don't cut away. Amarle, so he says to him, Im mishkachet lahom. Okay. If the members of the household of the Reish Galuta found him, lo tema laho lebe Reish Galuta, v'lo mideh. Okay. So if that's the case, he tells him, don't say anything to the members of the household of the Reish Galuta, v'lo mideh, right? Meha matnita tekifa. Don't tell them anything about this particular braita in regards to archways, because then you could prove the case that Rav Nachman was correct and Rav Sheshet was a little too hot to discuss, not appropriate, right? It was too quick to act, right? Now, we're going to get to a new Mishnah. I wish I could say it gets easier, but I can't. Okay, all right. Mishnah is going to tell us as follows. Let's come back to adjusting the alleyway, okay? And I'll try to finish up Hechsher Mabui, in regards to an adjustment to Mabui, okay? So that we can say we can carry inside it, right? And as I prepared this, I wondered to myself, why did this Mishnah come second as opposed to what we had the earlier Mishnah, okay? Unless it could have been that our Mishnah by which we started the Gemara, right? Okay, was already simply taking the assumption, right, that when we started, we were talking about the Mabui, okay, and therefore dealt with the Korah. Okay? So here, our Mishnah says, there is a disagreement on the adjustments that must be made for this alleyway. Beit Shammai omrim lechi v'korah. Beit Shammai says one needs both a side post, a lechi, and a korah, and a cross beam, okay, at the entrance. Beit Hillel omrim o lechi o korah. And Beit Hillel says it may be one or the other, either a lechi or a korah. And now we have a third opinion. Rabbi Eliezer Omer lechayin. Okay, and Rabbi Eliezer says 2 lechis are required, one on each side of the walls of the mabui before going into the Rishus Rabbi. Mishum Rabbi Yishmael Amar. Okay, and what happens? We now have a quote from a student of a story from regarding Rabbi Yishmael, and he says, Talmid echad lefnei Rabbi Akiva, that a particular student came in the presence of Rabbi Akiva and said, Lo nichlaku Beit Shammai u Beit Hillel amabui shahu pachot me'arba amot. That their argument of Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel was not in regards to a alleyway, right, an entrance way that was less than 4 amos wide, shahu nitar, that it's permitted, o belechi o bekorah, either with a lechi or a korah, al ma nechleku, on what were they arguing? Al rachav me'arba amot va'ad eser, on the fact, okay, that the width was from somehow between 4 and 10 amos. That's what they were arguing about. Shebeit Shammai omrim lechi v'korah, that Beit Shammai says it needs both a lechi and a korah, and Beit Hillel says lechi or a korah. Amar Rabbi Akiva, al zeh v'al zeh nechleku. No, Rabbi Akiva said they really argued on both cases. That Beit Shammai then is requiring a lechi and korah even when the entranceway is less than 4. Needs both even when it's less than 4 amos. So the Gemara asks, come on, according to whom? Delo kechananya ud velo ketanakama. This seems neither according to the view of Hananya nor to the view of Tanakama. Okay, both of them required more than a lechi and korah for the mabui. Amar Rav Yehuda Hachika Amar. This is what it means. Hechshe mabui satum ketzad. If we want to make an adjustment to a closed courtyard, how do we go about it? Beit Shammai omrim lechi v'korah. Beit Shammai says we need both a lechi and a crossbeam. Beit Hillel omrim o lechi o korah. And Beit Hillel says we need one or the other. Beit Shammai omrim lechi v'korah, lamemra de kasavre Beit Shammai. Why? Because Beit Shammai, it seems to be of the opinion, arba mechitzot deoraita, that you need 4 partitions to make it a separate, specific rishus, okay, that you could carry in. No, says the Gemara. That's not the issue. Okay, that can't be referred from there. Lizrok, it's in regards to throwing. Mishalosh hu demechayev. There, he says, one would be liable with 3 walls, according to Beit Shammai. Okay, the taltel ad ika arba, but for carrying, one requires 4 sides, 4 partitions. Beit Hillel omrim o lechi o korah. Beit Hillel is saying it could be either a lechi or a korah. Lema kasavre Beit Hillel. This seems to tell us that Beit Hillel is of the opinion shalosh mechitzot deoraita, that 3 walls, okay, is biblically required to enclose it in, right? Lo lizrok mishnayim hu demechayev. No, he's saying. There, it says that Beis Hillel says that's in regards, the two walls are sufficient, okay, to make someone chayav for throwing, okay? That's the case. B'taltel ad de'ika shalosh. But carrying, you need at least 3. Now, what happens? We get now to a new piece in the Mishnah, which we'll then just touch. Rabbi Eliezer Omer L'chaim. Remember, Rabbi Eliezer was the third opinion on this that said you needed 2 lechis. So the rabbis had a question and they asked about this. The following. Rabbi Eliezer, according to his view, L'chaim v'kora ka'amar, when he says that you need 2 side posts, does he also mean that you have to have a crossbeam? Or dilma l'chaim below kora ka'amar? Or maybe he's saying all you need is the 2 side posts without a kora, without a crossbeam. And I would say stay tuned tomorrow and we'll see what Rabbi Eliezer's view, how they try to explain his approach. We'll start there tomorrow on the bottom of Yud Aleph Hamud Beis. Okay? Everybody take care, stay well, and have a good Rosh Chodesh, everybody. Okay?
Thank you, Rabbi.
Remember, by the way, that tomorrow, if you're, you can still have an opportunity to hear shofar blowing. Okay? On Zoom, I guess. All right? Okay, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.
Have a good one.
Take care.